consulting services as a senior consultant, and I typically work in SharePoint server search area and I handle other technologies as well, including collaboration, ECM, document management, etc. So it's purely SharePoint. So today we would be talking about search in Office SharePoint Server 2007, how to customize it and how to extend it. SharePoint Server Search UI and build search applications on top of SharePoint Search. Prerequisites of the session are basic level of understanding of search in SharePoint 2007. Now, how many of you understand SharePoint, or how many of you have been working on SharePoint? 1, 2, okay, that's good. So I hope you are, and rest of you, do you understand what SharePoint is or absolutely clean? Okay, I'll just try to do justice because this session assumes that you'll have a basic understanding of SharePoint search. Okay, the agenda is customize the product UI, which includes the search center, customizing your out-of-the-box web path, using XSLT to customize your search UI, and then also we'll talk about extending the search using the query object model, web services to be used in the remote application, and indexing of custom data, and of course BDC, and then probably we'll wrap up and then come up with the questions. So typically in an organization, people say, yeah, we do use search, but our search is different. So what they intend to actually say is probably their search UI looks pretty much different, which is not absolutely similar to what we provide out of the box. So if you see from an out of the box perspective, this is the out of the box UI that SharePoint provides. So it's got a search box. Typically here is the place where you type in your keywords or query terms. You've got the core results web path that actually go back, execute the query, and render it on the UI to the end user. You've got the high confidence results, which is essentially an exact match result, which works for out of the box only for people search. In this case, we searched for Brian Cox, and that's the reason it appears in the high confidence result. Then you've got the search statistics web paths, which shows how many pages are there and how long did your search take to execute. Is it visible to everybody or? Oh, okay, because if I blow it up, my whole UI might toss up. Just a second. It doesn't go up. If I just change the UI, everything will get actually bloated, everything. So if you could just comment forward, probably it will help you see. Or if it's not at all, wow, okay. Then you've got a search statistics web path, and then you've got the pagination web path that takes you to various pages in the SharePoint results page. Then you've got the action link that help you do or interact with search results. In this case, you've got two sorting options, view by modified date and view by relevance. And on top of it, you can also subscribe to the search results so that you can get a notification over an email. And then you've got RSS feeds, which gives you the URL so that you can subscribe to your RSS feed, maybe via Outlook, maybe via third-party application. These are the search tabs that gives you a vertical experience. Out of the box, we've got two tabs, All Sites and People tab for people search. You can create your own customized tabs to give you a verticalized search experience. An example would be, let's say you would want to search a data which is based on a database and would want the UI to look in a specifically different way. So you can add an own tab and search from that particular tab. Then you've got the matching keyword. These are the objects or these are the keywords which are placed in the SharePoint from a taxonomy folks, who define keywords that would match your query word. And these are of course the best bets. These are again defined by a taxonomy folks. So this is overall the SharePoint UI that we've got. Okay, so if you ask from WSS search, it's a whole underlying platform change. The relevancy has increased, the scalability has increased, and the whole architecture has been changed. So if you see from a WSS 2.0 perspective, it uses the SQL full text query, which actually relied on database engine capacities to actually, render your search results, which is significantly different in SharePoint 2007. We really don't no more use SQL queries to get the results. So an out-of-the-box search tab, we've got two, All Sites and People tab. You can of course go ahead and create your own tabs. Creation of your own tabs would require a search page wherein you would be typing in your keywords and query words, and another page would be your search results page. That will actually give you a verticalized experience based on your subject area or your domain area. We've got in all 9 out of the box web parts, which I explained in the previous slide, including the search box, core results, and action links. And the web parts have properties such as formatting, which are configurable, and you can control the look and feel of those searched web parts that you see out there. For example, hash number of summary sentences that are returned as part of your results. Or do you want to turn on word stemming, or do you want to turn it off? Those kind of properties could be controlled from your web part properties. And of course, you can supply XSL and customize the look and feel of your web part. We'll just see a demo in short while. Now, there could be various reasons wherein you want to customize your UI. So you have seen out of the box UI. So probably your organization might not like that SharePoint-ish UI, and you would want to customize that particular UI. So you've got various options to customize UI, and the most easiest of them starts. So presentation is aligned in such a way that it goes from the easier option to a difficult option. So we'll begin with customizing the UI with XSLT. It's appropriate for scenarios which require change of the results layout or changing the look and feel. It could be as easy as highlighting your keywords in a different color. It could be as easy as grouping your results by, let's say, author, or maybe rendering your results in kind of a mail scenario when you have label kind of stuff. So those kind of combination and combination can be done simply by using XSLT. Pivoting using keyword syntax, which essentially means that, for example, I search for a query term called as SharePoint, and my search results returns bunch of documents, it returns bunch of PowerPoint slides, it returns bunch of PDF documents. So I can pivot my search results in such a way by providing the metadata. When I click on the metadata, for example, PDF, all documents from the search results, which are PDF documents, are returned back to me without really user, typing in the details and getting the results back. We'll see a demo for that shortly. The XSL is exposed as part of the web part property. You can create your XSL in your favorite editor, copy it, paste it back into the web part, and you're done to go. Using XSLT, you can do formatting of the results. You can do logic. Logic could be like XSL if, XSL else, then, those conditions. You can apply logic. You can apply math. So it could be like addition of 2 integers, subtraction, division kind of stuff. Okay, let's see a demo of XSL and customizing the SharePoint UI. Okay. Let's start with the, is it visible to everybody? Okay. So let's start with the search center. Search center, okay. This is the out-of-the-box UI of SharePoint search that you've got. So you've got 2 tabs which are available out of the box, all sites and people, and the third one is a customized tab which we have named it as customers. So this typically does a BDC search for us. Now let's go ahead and search for a query term. Okay. Now if you see, so this is all out of the box experience that you are seeing as of now. You're seeing the results are rendered in pretty much, plain format, comparable to the slide that I showed earlier. So this is the search core results web part, that's the search box, and you've got the action links where you can view by modified date, you can alert me, and you can have RSS feed subscribe too. Now, what we'll do is, we'll go ahead and customize the XSL and see how the UI changes. Now, there will be a couple of things that we would be doing now. One thing that we would be doing is changing the highlighting of the keywords. In this case, you can see the SharePoint is bolded in black color. We would change the color for the terms that are highlighted. What we'll do is we'll add another. So if you see the search results, there are a bunch of websites, there are a bunch of documents. There could be a bunch of PPTs as well. We'll render out a file extension for users to identify and do a pivoting on. But before that, let me just show you the web part and how it looks in an edit mode. So I'll just go ahead and edit the page. So these are all the web parts that are placed currently on the box. So the minor customizations that you can do using the UI itself is, for example, if you want to go ahead and modify the length of the text box, for example. Various properties are exposed in the XSL using the web part property, and see here, so you've got like how many results per page. Do you want 10 or 20? You can modify these properties. How many sentences do you want in a summary? I can probably do it to, let's say, 2 for now, and I can change the results to, let's say, 15 in a page. So let it be sorted by relevance in first case, and I'll just go and say OK. Now if you see, I will have 15 results in a page, and I would just have 2 as summary sentences. If you see here, just have 2 in the summary sentence, and I've got 15 results in a page. Another important property that you can use to customize is actually here is the XSL that is available out of the box. Not a pretty good editor, but you can see this is the out of the box XSL. Now what I've done is I've pre-created the XSL for you guys, and I'll just walk you through the changes that I've kind of done. So let me just highlight the changes. Okay, so these are a bunch of templates that are called by XSL. So I've created a template, display drill. So this calls a template called as display drill down, which accepts 3 parameters: value, field name, and label. And I have called this template here. And what I've done is, I've accepted the parameters. I test. This is the logic that I was talking about. I've tested it using XSL if I see that the length of the string is greater than 0, then what I do is I modify the href and catch hold of the k parameter and pass back that particular file extension so that I can refine my search results based on the file extension. That's one change that I'll show. The second change I have done is, as I showed you that the highlighted terms are all by default black. So what I've done is, I've changed the color of those to something better. So this is the place wherein you can add those colors. So I've said the first term should be orange, the second term should be brown, and the third term should be green. So for example, if I search for SharePoint evaluation guide, there are 3 terms. So SharePoint would appear as orange, evaluation would appear as brown, and guide would appear as green. So what I'll do is, I'll just go ahead and copy this XSL. And just override out of the box one. So I've just overwritten the XSL with my custom XSL. Just go ahead and publish the page. Okay, now can you see the difference? So I'll probably do a search again out there. So just type for 2 words. So if you see, your first word appears as orange, your second word appears as brown, and you'll all see there should be a file extension coming in somewhere for the documents. The reason why that file extension is not coming because I have not added that part of the result. So I'll just go ahead and edit that again. I'm sorry, I'm not sure why is this not coming on a full-blown size, but here. This defines what columns are returned as part of your results. So actually I had missed this. Control C, Control V, and I'm trying to pivot it on file extension. Is that spelling correct? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead and publish it. Here you go. Can you see a file extension out there? Now you see the search results consist of multiple things. It consists of websites, documents, some items, some text files. Now what I'll do is, I'll just click on this link file and I'll just get the docs back again. So in fact, I'm being very intuitive for the user and define those pivoting in the UI itself so that I can go and click back and refine his results based on the previous search results. Now the changes that happen behind the scenes on the top, if you see, initial query was SharePoint, and when I clicked on that particular link of doc extension, it appended a file extension :doc. I could actually have done this without anything, and I could just go ahead and search for SharePoint, and if I go and add here file extension : this is the SharePoint search syntax actually, or to be more precise, the keyword file extension. I could actually refine the results directly from the text box, but there could be a high degree of probability that the end user might not be able to do that. So in order to be more intuitive from the UI itself, we can actually provide extension out there, and you can go and click and search the results. So that's what the entire power of XSLT is. Okay, so this was basically about customizing the UI using XSL, and you could see that how easy it is to customize the SharePoint out of the box UI. Any XSLT folks who are pretty much comfortable with writing XSL, they can write comprehensive XSL and complex XSL and actually revamp the entire results UI purely doing XSL manipulation. Any questions? So if you see that the questions are purely related, just go ahead and ask. Okay, now let's talk about extending the search. There are various extension points that are available using the APIs. Customizing the query and results. One aspect of it you saw was customizing the web parts in the UI. Another aspect was to customize the query using the query object model. Another thing that you can do in extending is customizing the index, wherein you would want to build I protocol or I filters for your indexing of custom databases, or you would like to build some custom query time security trimming. Out of the box, SharePoint provides security trimming for file shares, Lotus Notes databases, SharePoint sites, wherein we are able to extract the ACL or security implications for a specific user. There could be scenarios wherein you cannot extract that information from from the source itself. A typical example would be, let's say, for example, a database. From a specific table, it might be difficult to restrict a user for a specific row. So you could build a custom security trimmer, plug it into SharePoint, and trim the results based on the user identity. I'll show a demo for that as well. Okay, so you can use the query object model to build custom search UI web parts. You saw out of the box UI web parts. You might not be really wanting to use them. You would be wanting to build your own customized UI web parts. So you could use the query object model to fire SQL queries or fire keyword syntax queries and build your own custom web parts. To have direct access to query and results properties. If you saw in the previous example, the implicit condition is an AND condition, wherein I search for SharePoint and file extension as document. You don't have an implicit OR out there or explicit OR out there. In order to do that, you actually have to build your own custom web part using an object model. To invoke custom queries, there could be a requirement wherein you would want to get a bunch of columns. You would want to have complex conditions like complex AND, OR, combined together or grouped together. You'll have to use all your own custom web parts. There are primarily two types of query syntaxes. One is the keyword syntax, which you just saw, and another one is the SQL syntax, which is pretty much in line with the generic SQL statement that we write for SQL Server. We'll see again how it looks like. And another one was the URL syntax, which is not a syntax, I would say. It's more of a accessing mechanism. Remember, we saw in the URL when I'm saying k is equal to SharePoint and file extension is equal to doc. That's what we call it as a URL syntax. So where do you use the query syntax? So the use case would be end users can actually directly type in minus or plus or something of that sort. You can use in XSL. So the example would be, for example, you want to search for gallery hinges and you don't want any results to come that has got brass in it. So I'm saying minus brass, which says do not get results that has got brass, but get something that has got gallery hinges and get it from the site HTTP support desk and get it from a scope called as products. So that's how your query syntax looks like. It's pretty much simple and easy to use by the end user as well. So for example, this is called as the excluded term. So they've got like plus, which is an implicit, and you've got minus, which that means exclude a specific term. In the example below, bike minus fitness. Return me all the bikes, but which are not fitness bikes. SharePoint search minus author Arpan Shah. Get me everything that's based that has got SharePoint search, but which is not authored by Arpan Shah. Filter by a string or integer property, we just saw file extension or author : Nakul. The behavior is implicit AND. So if you've got two conditions, the behavior is AND. We search for SharePoint and an extension. There's no OR out there. To have OR, you'll have to use the object model. Consistent property value syntax, and this is pretty much synchronous across any of the search applications that we have, whether it's Windows Live Search or Office Search or anything. Second syntax that we've got is the SQL syntax. Use case, advanced search solutions, wherein you would want to do a free text search. Would you want to provide a wildcard support to your queries? You will have to use your SQL queries. If you want to have built some complex queries based on complex grouping conditions like having multiple ANDs or having multiple ORs, you will have to use a SQL query. Now, the example that you saw in the previous slide, gallery hinges minus brass, site HTTP support desk and from scope products. If you convert it to a SQL syntax, it will look something like this. So like URL title description from portal content.scope, where free text gallery hinges and site is equal to from support desk and scope is equal to products, and it should not contain brass in it. So that's the SQL equivalent of the query that we typed in the keyword syntax. If you see the SQL statement, it is pretty much in line with what you write in your normal database SQL as well. The advantage of SQL syntax are its full strength and complete coverage. So no matter how complex queries you would want to build, you can actually achieve them writing in SQL syntax. Free text, for example, so it's got various functions and various keywords that you can use to execute your SQL query. For example, free text, so if you have a condition called as where free text is equal to computer, software, hardware, it searches for documents that contains computer, software, and hardware. So typically, a free text keyword is used wherein you want to search various words across a specific document. So wherever they appear, it would actually get the documents for you. You can have arbitrary grouping for and, or, and not. So you can have multiple groupings, this and this, but not this, let's say, for example. Oops. No, why is it going? Okay. Then you can use other keyword called as contains. This gives you a partial support for wildcard. For example, where contains compute, it will search for computers, it will search for any word that is like compulsory, and it will search for any word that has got computation. So any documents that have got these three words, it will actually get them. So which essentially means anything that comes after compute, it will get it for you. Then you've got like keyword, which basically gives you a pattern matching, for example, underscore or percent kind of stuff. And then of course you can order by any kind of a property. In the out of the box UI, wherein you saw that you could only do an ordering or sorting by relevance or by modified date. By using a SQL query, you can actually sort it by any column that you want. This is the URL syntax use case for launching a URL in custom application. Let's say you've got some third-party application and you want to directly launch the search results. You can actually type in the URL and you'll get the search results. You can actually save the search results in form of a query, in form of a URL, so that any user when clicks that particular URL, he straight away gets the results. So it could be in the following formats. Result.aspx is the page name where you render your results, SharePoint results. K is basically the parameter or holds your keywords. So in this case, results.aspx k is equal to fish. You get all the results that have got fish in it. If you want to specify a scope, k is equal to fish, and s is the URL parameter for scope, where scope is equal to BBC. And if you want to sort the results, you can actually append your URL with v, and you can sort it by either modified date or relevance. And if you want to do a paging, you can give a start page. We'll see a demo for this one as well. Okay. Query object model. The various features are a managed code API. It's all .NET core. You can use in your .NET or C# applications. If you really want to use in, let's say, your remote applications which are like Java based or some other language based, you can actually go ahead and use the web services as well. Single request, multiple results. If you see in the out of the box UI, you've got various sections. You've got the search core results web part. You've got high confidence results. You've got best bets. You've got keywords. So these are multiple result sets. The query is fired a single time, and you are returned back with multiple results. Result types are relevant results, high confidence results, special terms, and definitions. And you can also set optional parameters using the object model, which could be like number of sentences to be returned in the summary, implicit and or, number of results that are supposed to be returned, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, whatever is the number. Ignore of noise words. Noise words are something that really does not have any meaning. For example, and, is, or kind of stuff. So you want to ignore them, or you want to have them considered as during the search or query. And then you've got, do you want to enable stemming, or you want to disable stemming, or do you want to have any kind of a language bias, or you don't want to have. So these all properties can actually be set using the object model as well. Some of them, of course, can be set from the web part UI that we saw previously, but some of them cannot be set. So for that, you will have to use your own object model and create your own web parts. Okay, let's see how it actually travels. So be it a keyword query or a SQL query, you have to call an execute method. After you call an execute method, that particular query wrapped up goes to the query engine, and you get a result table collection. Result table collection is nothing but the results that you saw, relevant results, high confidence results, best, and definitions that are returned. Implements iData Reader so that you can iterate through that, enumerate through that, and create your own UI that you want. Whether you want to display it in out-of-the-box search UI, or maybe you want to display it in a thick client, thin client, whatever application it is. Same flow, whether it is keyword or SQL syntax, set up the query text and various options using the object model, call the execute method, and retrieve a set of iData Reader objects, which are essentially your various results that are returned. We'll just go ahead and see a quick demo of this one. Okay. But before that, let me just show you the URL syntax. So this is what I was referring to. Can you see this? Okay. Is it visible? Not at all? Okay. Let me just try to change the resolution. This anyway is bare minimum. Okay, so if you see the URL, it's like results.astx page, which is your results page, and then you've got k is equal to SharePoint, which is your keyword, and then of course you've got file extension is equal to docx. So even if I go ahead and close this browser and just copy and paste the URL, I didn't copy properly. Okay, I'll just close the browser again. Okay. So if I just go ahead and paste the URL, I'll still be able to get the results. So you know the use basically, you want to save some pre-saved searches, just save it in form of a query string and you are done. Just click it open and you'll get the results directly. Now let's go ahead and see how can you use an object model to create some simple web part. So I've already created one web part, a simple web part. So I add reference to couple of DLLs from SharePoint, Office Search Server and Office Server, Office Search Server.search.query and Office Search Server. I'll not get into how to create a web part. So this is what I do. So I create a new keyword query syntax. So if it is a keyword query syntax, you need to write a keyword query syntax. If it's a SQL query, you need to write a SQL query syntax. I'm setting the query and I'm getting the relevant results. I'm setting certain optional properties like row limit, start row, and ultimately I'm calling the execute method that would return me the results. And once I execute the query, I get the relevant results into a table, specific table. I iterate through and build a UI, a tabular format, and I finally render my web part. So I've already have this web part deployed on the box. What I'll do is, just to give you a brief comparison, I'll add the web part in this particular page itself. Pretty hard to get it. Okay, I'll just go ahead and drag and drop it here. Probably just above the core results web part. Go ahead and publish this page. See that I could alter the UI behavior and I have rendered the results in a tabular format. Now you can just go ahead and write in whatever you want, whatever complexity you want to get into, and you can manipulate and create custom web parts using the query object model. So this is a pretty simple one. Now I'll explain what happens behind the scenes. If you see, these all out of the box except the one out here, all the 9 out of the box search web part, they communicate with each other using a hidden query object. So that hidden object is actually sealed. You really can't do anything with that. So what that hidden object does is it fires the query on behalf of all those web parts only one time, gets the results, wraps it up in a XML format, and distributes it to all the web parts. Now the problem is that all these web parts are actually sealed. You really can't, do an inherit and build your own implementation. However, the core search results web part can be inherited, and you can do some kind of inheritance out there. But if you are looking at developing the other web part, for example, high confidence results or best bets or search pagination, and if you're building your own custom web part, you'll have to take care of all those stuff as well, because you'll not get them out of the box in that case. Okay. Indexing custom data. So this is something pretty much new in SharePoint 2007. That's what you asked, that how different is it from 2003. That's one of the key differentiating factors from 2003 as well. Previously, we could only search the content which is stored under SharePoint or maybe some other repository. But if you wanted to, let's say, search a database, you either have to rely on some custom applications or maybe SQL full text query or something else, but not SharePoint. Now it adds the capability to search the data or data within the database, not only documents. Organizations store a lot of data in their, a lot of data in SAP, Siebel, which are CRM products, but vertical applications, they really can't provide a unified search experience on that. Or I would say they cannot provide enterprise search, because if you use SAP search, it's actually only searching SAP. You really don't have a entire enterprise search implemented out there. Most users can't locate or access vertical apps. There are very few people who have direct access to SAP data or who have direct access to SAP UI. Hard to crawl business data with SharePoint, which was the scenario in 2003 days. Now, with the 2007, the proprietary data can be accessed using Business Data Catalog, which is the new technology in SharePoint 2007. And BDC then exposes this data to many features in SharePoint. For example, there are many BDC web parts that you can use to display or surface your SAP data within your SharePoint UI itself. Search can easily index the data. No need to write ifilters or custom protocol handlers. There's no need to create an HTML representation of the same. It's highly customizable results, because as you saw, the results would be rendered as part of your SharePoint results, and you can customize them in whatever look and feel you want. Integrated with scopes and search center. So if you see, that's correct. Okay, that's correct. For example, let's take PDF. We don't have an out-of-the-box for PDF. So Adobe has an out-of-the-box filter for searching and indexing of your PDF documents. There's another format called the TIFF. In 2007, we don't have an iFilter for TIFF format. But there are other partner solutions who understand those file formats in a better way and have created some kind of iProtocol handlers and iFilters so that we can enable indexing of those documents as well. In short, if you want to create, or if you have a proprietary data stored wherein, or let's say for example a document format, you would need to create your own iFilter and iProtocol handler. Because iProtocol handler would take care of talking to that content source, and iFilter would take care of cracking open that particular repository and indexing the text out of it. In that case, it's pretty much similar to what you used to do in 2003. As far as, no, this is primarily searching your database data, not proprietary formats. Now, database data means any ODBC or OLEDB compliant data source, any data source that can be connected using area.net, for example, Oracle, for example, Postgres, for example, SQL Server. If you have data within that and you want to index that data, you don't have to write any iFilter or protocol handlers. Yes, as of now, we just support primitive data types, which are typically string, int, varchar, but we don't support image or blob kind of data types. We don't support as of now. Let me just show you quickly one thing. For JPG, I believe there are iFilters available. So basically, okay, there are two stuff involved out there. If you're storing that JPG in SharePoint, you attach metadata that you can index without really having an iFilter for JPG. But if you want to crack open the JPG image itself and index the image itself, we'll have to have an I filter for that. Now if you see this, yes, of course. There are implementations which you need to inherit from. There are interfaces which you need to inherit from and implement your own I filters and create or index your own custom data repositories. Absolutely doable. Yes, of course, you can. So if you see this customers tab, this will give you a verticalized experience on customers. So this is essentially a BDC search. The UI looks pretty much the same, integrated with SharePoint itself and rendered within the SharePoint UI. So let's say, for example, I search for bikes. Now you've got, so this data is essentially coming from SharePoint index, and SharePoint has actually indexed the database contents using BDC. Now, if you see, I really don't have to do, if I click on this particular stuff, this pops up more further details of that particular entity, that particular search result that you saw. You really don't have to spend time creating this. This is a bit customized one, but you really don't have to create an HTML representation of the entity that sits on the database side. A typical example, let's say, would be a customer. I search for a customer, and if you click on a customer, it will get me more relevant details, more properties for that particular customer from the database directly. And you really don't have to bother about creating an HTML UI for that. You can directly do it via SharePoint. Okay, so I'll just explain how typically a BDC works. Now, to create a BDC or to enable BDC to work, you need to create an XML definition file. The XML definition file is nothing but data about your database. That what is the table that you want to index? What are the data types of the columns that you have? And what is the select query that you want to really get that would fetch the results? Sorry, will actually fetch the results for you. Now, the technology that connects to the database is basically .NET providers or whatever provider can be used to connect to your database. It goes to the database, gets the table, gets the rows, and indexes them. And the data actually comes into SharePoint. The index data actually comes into SharePoint. When you actually do a search, the search results come from SharePoint index, not from the database. But when you open up that specific entity, that actually comes from the database directly. Okay. Index the business data catalog, highest integration without really writing any code. All you have to do is write an XML definition file. To write that particular file, either you can use your favorite XML editor, start typing with your hand, or you can use some tools that are available, for example, BDC MetaMan or BDC Metadata Editor, that you can use to generate some basic schema of the file, and then you can go ahead and edit on your own. Expose data as XML via HTTP. You can also use web services which are exposed and index the data available via web services. For example, if you have a web service that exposes certain data, I can use BDC to connect to that web service and get the data which is behind that particular web service. Developer, so you really don't need to develop a custom protocol handler to gather data. Interfaces, sorry, I missed something. Okay, no. So to develop a protocol handler to gather data from custom repositories, interfaces are really same as SPS 2003. You can actually have a look at MSDN. We can search for I, or you can look at I search protocol and I URL accessor. Develop I filter for custom file formats. Make sure I filters that you create are able to run multi-threaded. Otherwise, there will be a performance bottleneck. So as far as creating of I protocol handlers and I filters are concerned, they are pretty much same as we had in 2003. Security. So I explained before that there are certain scenarios where we are not able to security trim the results. By default in SharePoint, the results are security trimmed. That means that if you don't have access to a specific data, that data is not displayed as part of the search results. There could be certain cases wherein we are not able to security trim it. An example would be, let's say there's a website that does not provide any security info for a user, but it is still indexed, and you would want that it should be security trimmed for the end user that you are targeting for. Now, to do that, you can actually write a custom security trimmer. You have to implement an iSecurity trimmer interface and implement iInitialize and check access method. iInitialize method is actually called once when it is loaded in the worker process, and check access is called every time a query result is rendered to the end user. You'll have to add the assembly in the GAC. I'll just show you a quick demo on this one. You'll have to add the assembly to the GAC and then register the security trimmer using an STS ADM command. I'll just quickly show you. I'll not be able to show you how it actually runs, but I'll be able to show you how the code looks like. Okay, here is the custom security trimmer. This particular method is just called once when the DLL is loaded into the worker process and is not executed again unless the worker process is recycled. And you have to implement a check access method. Now, what I'm doing out here is to get or to security trim the results based on the user. First thing that you need to do is get hold of a user or the current logged in user who is actually doing the search. To get the user, if it is a Windows integrated authentication, you have to use Windows identity.getCurrent.name. If it is a form space authentication, then you have to use HTTP context.currentuser.identity.name. Now, what I'm doing is, once the search is executed and the search URLs are actually rendered to the end user, or search results are actually rendered to the end user, they are returned, and I'm iterating through all the URLs that are out there. And I can add the logic out here to test if a user has access to that particular or data or not. And based on that, I'm setting here true or false. You can add another complex logic to it, whether you want to really check for a user exists in some part of database or it exists some part of Active Directory group or something of that sort, and then return the results to the end user. Now, since this check access is called for every search result that is rendered, it does have a performance impact. And you might want to add a check on the upper limit. And the way you do it is, so let's say you want to implement this check only for the 200 results. And what I do is I set this particular constant and I scroll down and I see here I'm testing for that particular count. If there are more than 200 results for which you are requiring a check access method, it would actually throw an exception after testing it here. If check limit is greater than the limit that you have set, just throw an exception and ask the user to refire a query. Because this check access is called every time a search result, or it's basically called the number of times the search results are there, or the number of search results are there, it is called every time. So it does have a performance impact. Now, in order to use the custom security trimmer, you need to deploy the assembly into GAC and register the security trimmer with shared services using STS ADM command. Okay. Probably the last one. You saw that you could use the OM or object model to do various manipulations to search. Now, if you see, entire search can be customized using the object model. Now, there could be certain situations, or the only drawback with the object model is the code needs to run on the box. On the box means on the box where you have got SharePoint running. Now, there could be scenarios wherein you are building some third-party applications where you need to fire the queries remotely. For example, it could be that you are developing a thick client application that sits on everybody's desktop. Or for example, you are building a Java application that would need to use a web service because that really cannot use the object model. Now, so SharePoint search is exposed via a web service as well. It returns results as XML format. Office Research Pane. I'm not sure how many of you have seen Office Research Pane. Has anyone of you seen Office Research Pane? Okay. If no, it is used actually out there. It has got two methods, query EX and query. Query returns XML format data or results in XML format, and query EX returns a .NET data set. So you can call each of these methods to get the results based on the client that you're using to call or invoke that web service. It's got some additional methods and properties. For example, get search metadata, which would get you all the scopes that are defined, keywords defined, best bet defined, and you can also test, or you can also see to what shared services provider the web application is connected to, and you can also check the status of the service, whether the query servers are up and running or whether the search service is up and running. Let's just do a recap. The user interface is pretty much easily customized to achieve a different look and feel from a UI perspective, which we saw using XSLT. It's easy to extend search to develop custom applications, whether they are local or remote. For local, you probably use an object model. For remote, you'll go ahead and use, or you have to use a web services. You can plug into any data source, be it BDC, be it any database using BDC, or maybe custom repositories by developing custom filters, or maybe using some third-party or partner products. I guess that's it from my side. Any questions? Mm-hmm.
Use the SharePoint designer, put a data in the part and
Absolutely correct. So,
can I do it out of the box also then using XML web services web part?
no, I didn't get you. So first one, using SharePoint designer, directly targeting the web service, yes, not a problem. The second part?
Out of the box XML web services web part. But there's an out of the box XML web services web part.
No, that you will not be able to use. You're not able. But from SharePoint designer, wherein you are creating a data connection, you can actually point to a web service and get the data for you. Any other questions? Yeah? Sorry? That's what I said. If you want to use, so there are various ways of doing that actually. So there's nothing called a save a search, or you can save the search results. Now the various ways to do it would be, first thing would be to save the URL as such. So example would be http moss.litway.com moss.litway.com/search/results.aspx K is equal to your keyword. Save the URL. Whenever you want to search, just open up that URL. No, not out of the box. But you can, however, create a custom UI on top of it to do that. Another way of saving the search or simulate that particular functionality would be, you can subscribe to the search results. Okay, when you do a subscription, whenever a search result change, let's say a new document has been added today, so your search results actually change, you'll be notified and sent an email. Another way would be to subscribe to your search results RSS feeds. So whenever there is a change, you'll be notified again. But what you're talking about, like you want to exclude every time, or you really want to customize the experience itself of saving the search, no. But you can build a custom UI on top of it. Yes. Yes. No, the definition would be one, but that XML file would have multiple sections. No, the way it works is, when you build an XML file or a BDC definition file, you deploy it to a specific server, maybe to your dev server. You go ahead, you index your data, you are done. That you are doing it against your dev environment or against your dev SQL servers. Now you move this stuff to your production server. What will happen is you will redeploy your BDC file by modifying the configuration settings. So you really don't have to write entire XML file again, assuming the database schema is the same, otherwise it will fail. Now what you'll do is, once you have deployed the file to production environment, you'll point it to probably a SQL server, which is a production SQL server. And you will refire indexing process. That will index the production server data. Any further questions? Is that all? Cool, I'm done. Thank you.